Those are some sexy casting imperfections. God, I love me some flimsy plastic. Nice. I've heard it all before. For that kind of money, you could have got an AR-15. Oh man, you sure did have to spend a lot of money to make that thing as capable as an AR-15. Heard it all, don't care, save it. Sometimes casting imperfections, outdated designs, and some would say outdated ergos, insufficient ergos, or whatever the excuse is to not buy these classic retro firearms. I think those are the reason why a lot of people, such as myself, are drawn to them. Why they become so cool and collectible is just because they are so different, and sometimes the quote-unquote flaws that these older guns have are character that make them special, collectible, and way more fun to shoot. So today, on that point, we're going to talk about a brand new gun to me. It's definitely, this gun might be older than I am for all I know, but it's definitely in the 90s, so I've got a few years on it. But I finally scored one, man. I got a Daewoo. Now, I've had videos on Daewoos in the past, the K1, the K2, and the DR200, which is what you have here, which is the ban era version of the pre-ban K2 that came in back in the 80s and early 90s. Virtually the same gun, just a few features deleted so they could import it during the 94 to 04 ban. So today, let's just talk retro guns and why they're cool. Specifically, why my new Daewoo was so cool, how I got it, why I'm so excited about getting it, and some future plans I might have for it. So yeah, it's kind of like an AK. It's got a gas piston. Yeah. I want to start off by talking about how I acquired this Daewoo and how I kind of got on the journey of really needing a Daewoo in my life. Never really paid attention to them. So my buddy Jay, we'll just use the name Jay. He hates it when I mention his name. A couple years ago, he actually let me borrow a K1 and a K2 for some videos he offered. He said, man, I think you could make some cool videos with them. And at that time, I knew what Daewoos were. I'd never ever shot one. And you know, I'd seen the pre-bans and they were really expensive. So guns I can't really afford, I don't really pay attention to all that much. So I went into it like with just a blank slate of not having an opinion on these things. And after spending like a month with all three of his Daewoos, he even let us borrow a DR200, which of the three was my favorite. And we'll get into why later. But I don't know, shooting his guns really just showed me the pure sex appeal that these things have, how different a shooting experience it is to shoot one, and how easy they are to live with. I mean, they take AR mags, they shoot 223 and 5.56, but they have the long stroke gas piston and a tunable gas block, a little bit of an AK there, and maybe like a little bit of a SIG 550-esque gas block. Tunes the exact same way, and a fixed charging handle. From an AK guy, this thing was like checking all the right boxes and taking mags and ammo that I already had. So I thought, damn, you know, I mean, yeah, even if they're expensive, they're pretty easy to live with. Then we really started talking about the DR200, the band compliant version that came in. Now the old pre-bans, the K1 and the K2s, they're very expensive, very, very collectible, and you definitely could hurt the value by changing out parts or just really running them hard at the range and putting high round counts through them. So a lot of those guns have become safe queens. And I guess rightfully so, there aren't that many of them in the country. There's a butt ton of DR200s in the country that came in with the permanently affixed muzzle device, the flash cone basically, no bayo lug, and they would have had the really ugly thumb hole stocks, and they don't have the folding mech built into the lower like the K2 does, but everything else is there. Tunable gas block, the gas piston, the furniture, it's all there. And thanks to companies like Stormworks, and there's other few companies out there, there's aftermarket support for the Daewoo DR200 and the K1 and the K2, but after talking with Jay, he's like, dude, the DR200s are like, maybe not half the price, but maybe a third of the price of their pre-bang counterparts, so you can get them to them for way less money. It's the same shooting experience, and for those that like a little bit more performance and like to just tinker a little bit with their guns, the DR200 is a blank canvas. The aftermarket to deban these things is out there, and honestly, you kind of end up with potentially a better shooting gun even than the pre-ban K2. This is the one to have and modify and not lose value. If anything, I've seen DR200s gain value when you deban them like this. So I think this is the one to own if you're a shooter. So let's get into where I found this thing and what I paid for it. So I'm with my good buddy Rodrigo. You guys have seen him on the channel. His YouTube channel is called H-Town Werewolf. Does a lot of great videos. He and I have been hitting up a lot of gun shows together lately. We live relatively close, so anytime one's in town, we both go. A pocket full of cash. And I didn't go there looking for one of these, but with guns like this, a lot of old like pre-ban and even interesting things like this, typically the way it goes when you find them, you weren't looking for it. Hopefully you had some cash at the time. You really just have to be in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly what happened here. So there's a guy that I always see at the gun show. I don't remember the name of his business, but I always know this guy's table always has cool Cold War era, pre-ban, some ban compliant stuff, but he's always got cool stuff. And then from a distance, I see that barrel and that gas block, and I'm like, ooh, Daewoo. I thought it might have been a K2 from like 100 feet away, and I knew there's no way I'm touching that. You know, I think I had like 1,500 bucks on me at the time. So walk over to the table and I'm like, ah, DR200, the exact one that I want, shouldn't be that expensive. And before I saw the price, this gun actually already had the Stormworks thumb hole delete with the CNC Warrior folding mech. It had a different tubular stock. It had like the really long one. So I actually bought from CNC Warrior the like middle of the road folding tubular stock. But anyway, what does he want for it? And I think at the time he was asking about 15 for it. Well, I wasn't going to pay that, so we did a little bit of haggling. And you know, I always make small talk with this guy at the gun show when I'm in there, and he recognized me just from the conversations we've had in the past. I bought mags from him, and Rodrigo's actually bought a SIG K1A1 from the guy. So he's like, oh, these dudes spend money with me. And I actually walked out of that gun show with this gun for like 1,300 bucks. Came with one mag. But the big bonus there was that's well below market price in my opinion, and I kind of got the stock adapter for free, the grip for free, and I replaced the stock, so that was added cost. But that's how I found it, man. Right place, right time. Happened to have a wad of cash on me, and man, the stars just really aligned. And to put that in perspective, I've seen DR200s totally still ban compliant go for substantially more than that, like 15, 16. I got this one for cheaper with aftermarket on it. The K2 pre-ban models go anywhere from like 25, like that's the cheapest I've ever seen them go, and I've seen them creep up over 3 grand. The secret's out on those things. Like everyone knows they're awesome guns, they're rare guns, and they're fun to shoot. Anyway, so that's actually how I acquired this thing. And then we started the aftermarket. We started putting some extra things on this thing to really get it where I think the DR200 needs to be. So let me show you those parts now. Starting on that stock, which we talked about earlier, CNC Warrior sells these in several different lengths. They have like a really short one, a middle of the road, and a long one. This one had the really long one, too long for me. So I got the mid-length one, which I honestly think looks kind of cool. I really wanted to put the 1913 adapter on there so I could run SIG stocks and stuff, but this was already on there. I got that part for free, and you know, I don't hate the tubular stock. I think it still looks kind of retro. Put a little goon tape on there so I'm not burning the crap out of my cheek when that stock heats up on a 103-degree day such as this. And it really does keep the heat off of me and feels good. And honestly, it's a really nice stock. Folds really easy. You can see there it bolts onto that adapter in the rear. Locks in nice and tight. Because this is a piston gun, these can have folding stocks. Kind of nice. You do have some up and down movement with these. If I wanted to run iron sights all the time, I would definitely need to run this stock a little bit lower. But I've got it ran slightly higher because I run this really high optic, the Trijicon RX01, and it's a perfect sight picture. On that Trijicon RX01, you'll notice that it's got a little pick mount on there. That's actually another Stormworks product. These guns come with these little raised pieces here that are tapped and threaded. So they're ready to go for a 1913 rail. So thankfully Stormworks makes a very easy to acquire part, bolts right on, and makes your dot sit nice and low. And it's not like a rail that runs the whole top. It's not this huge aftermarket like chassis system or anything. It's just a little bit of pick, non-intrusive to the body lines of the gun. Looks really good. And then of course we have that ergo grip we talked about earlier. It's actually a pretty decent grip angle. I've got the Pierce Precision K2 grip at the house. Haven't changed it out because I don't necessarily hate this one. It's not bad. I did end up getting the Pierce Precision charging handle These things come with an upswept charging handle that can sometimes drag your knuckles if you do run optics on these. So this charging handle lays out flat. So no matter what you do, you'll never touch that, that dot. So a little bit more to grab onto, better angle. It's a pretty nice upgrade and literally drops right in like 5 seconds. Another cool piece from Pierce here is the bolt latch. It's extended. You get a bit more paddle up here to drop it, a little bit more here to catch it. And it's actually been pretty handy. I was on the fence about that one because I didn't want to like take away from the looks of the gun, but honestly, if I didn't tell you it was there, you probably wouldn't have noticed it was there. So pretty neat like little sleeper upgrade that does add quite a bit of benefit to this thing with really fast mag changes. The safety actually moves, it travels 180 degrees. And unless you have like salad fingers, to rotate it back into safe is very difficult. So I don't remember if this is Stormworks that makes these or if it's Pierce. I want to say it's Stormworks, but there's a 90-degree throw safety lever, as you can see there. I'll show you over here. This little guy, factory would have rotated all the way around pointing straight. Now, more like an AR. Such a cheap, easy part to pop in, and it does make the shooting experience so much nicer. You will hate the factory safeties on these. Just such an odd way to have a safety operate with that much throw. Last thing is the Pierce Precision 5-position gas key here. So these would have come factory with 3 positions and a shutoff. This is 5 positions with a shutoff. And for a potential suppressor host, this is a big deal. And because it's, you know, gas piston and has tunable gas, it's a very quiet, very pleasant gun to suppress. It's just another big bonus of the DR200 and just the K2 in general. And I know they didn't have that in mind when they designed these things, but as a civilian owning one, oh yeah, they're awesome suppressed guns. Okay, I'm gonna give you a bit of a multi-view here so you can actually see us progressing towards the camera while taking out targets. We'll have a little bit of a reload in here, but with the first person view, you should be able to see what I'm shooting at and kind of see what it's like to shoot a Daewoo from my perspective. And we're using the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. I get that all the time. People ask how we're getting the FPS view shots, and that's how. It's kind of cool. I don't have to wear a camera on my head. So there's a full review coming out on those two eventually. That way you can kind of see what it's like shooting a Daewoo from a first-person view, and I guess what it's like to hold it and look down the sights. All right, here we go. Now, a lot of times I think gun collectors in general can kind of like fall into that trap of finding your dream gun. Maybe it's something old, something collectible, something Cold War, and it's so rare and collectible, you fall into the trap of just never shooting it. You're constantly worried about hurting the value, and it just ends up sitting in the safe all the time. Because, you know, some of this stuff is just so rare and expensive that you never shoot them, or you don't have a place to shoot them. someone like me, I like taking stuff like this that's different to shooting competitions. That's my kink, man. And even shooting competitions can get really watered down because if you want to go to a shooting match and be successful, you have to run some variant of an AR-15 or you're gonna lose. That's just the way it is. Same goes with pistols, like 2011s, you know, really pimped out like CZs. They're kind of king of the castle. To bring anything else, you're just saying, I'm okay with having like a different shooting experience. I'm okay with losing, I guess. So, you know, that's kind of been the way it is. But, you know, I experience that all the time. So me and some buddies actually developed a shooting competition called Lethal Weapons Texas, specifically made to run retro firearms. So, you know, if you do have something like this, maybe a Daewoo or, you know, M16A2 or whatever it is, something that just can't stand a chance in like modern shooting competitions, we actually only allow the retro guns, basically anything pre-1986, World War II era, turn of the century, World War I, Vietnam, Cold War, like all the cool stuff, and like everyone was making their own versions. So like with this Daewoo, I would be able to shoot this. If I took the dot off, I could run the iron sight division at Lethal Weapons, and I would only be competing against other old guns. And all the AR-15s at that match have carry handles. Like no one out there is running new stuff. And there's even open divisions now where you can just mount a dot on it. So what's really cool is it's like those old Soldier of Fortune days where guns had to be run the way that they were bought off the shelf. But what was really cool about those days, it was all done like back in the 70s and 80s. So guns were so different from one another and everyone was trying something different and trying to like be good on that platform. So at Lethal Weapons, you can be the guy that brings out the Daewoo and crush a lot of AR-15s, and like same goes for like AKs, or if you're into carry handles, you can come out and be competitive and be surrounded by other guns like this that you never see at shooting competitions, but you never really see them at gun ranges in general because no one shoots them. And we really wanted Lethal Weapons to be that one time a year that you bring that rare collectible item out of the safe, make the pilgrimage, and come shoot a match. And like this match is going to be like 70s and 80s and 90s themed, like lots of props. Like it's going to feel like you're traveling back in time while shooting your old gun. So rant over, but there is a place to enjoy guns like this in Texas. I'll leave the link down below if you end up wanting to buy tickets to come hang out with us in October. So back to the gun. So I feel so fortunate to own this thing. I feel like as the years go on, guns like this are getting harder and harder to find. There's such a small, like fixed amount of them because they didn't come in that long. You know, like when my dad and my uncle were, you know, in their teens and 20s, Daewoos were everywhere and they were relatively inexpensive. And then thanks to bans and everything else, you know, they came in for a little while as DR200s, but then, you know, Daewoo just decided, like a lot of manufacturers decided back in that 10-year ban, that it just was not worth making guns ban compliant just to sell to American civilians. So unfortunately, that's why we lost the Daewoo firearms. And they're so badass that that's really sad, but who knows, they may come back one day. So future plans for the DR200. I'm gonna show you a picture here. A buddy of mine, Doc Hollywood, actually has a DR200 where he cut the barrel down to 16 inches. And I probably didn't mention that before, but all of the DR200s and the K2s have 18-inch 1 in 12 barrels. Very, very few came in. I'm talking like maybe a couple hundred came in with tighter twist rates, and those are heavily sought after. But mine's 1 in 12, like the majority of them. But after seeing his gun cut down to 16 inches, and even then you wouldn't have to pin and weld anything because, you know, it's 16. I think I definitely would like to do that. They just look almost perfect with a 16-inch barrel. 18, it's a little long, looks a little lopsided, you might agree. But I think that may happen. What's definitely going to happen is I'm going to remove this permanently affixed flash cone. They're silver soldered in place, so they have to be removed with like a lot of heat. I've never taken one off of a Daewoo, so I know someone that has. I'm going to trust them to do it. I don't want to screw it up because it is a rare gun and I don't want to hurt it. But the point to both of those changes would be to keep running this thing suppressed. With that gas block, awesome suppressor host, this thing has to be set up to run a can. So we may go 16, or we may just get rid of that and put a really small like chemo adapter on there so we can run cans. And finally, the cherry on top of the cake would really be one of the ultra rare MITS rails that unfortunately have been sold out for probably a year and a half. Back when I made my original Daewoo videos, all 3 of them, I remember there was one website that had one in stock. And I remember my buddy told me, he's like, you should buy that rail because you're gonna find one of these one day. And when that rail sells out, it's probably never coming back. Well, I didn't. And here I am really kicking myself, wishing, God, if I could give anything, I would go back and buy that MITS rail. On a DR200, when you've already got like a different stock in the rear, the front rail actually looks pretty good with a slightly modernized Daewoo. Unfortunately, there's no way to get them that I know of without crime. So don't know if I want to risk that. It's kind of like, it's honestly harder to get than Zenitco right now. And Zenitco's gotten pretty hard to get and expensive. It's like worse than that. But they're still available in Korea, just not here. So right now, factory handguard's fine. It really heats up fast. Would love to get the MITS rail, but I won't hold my breath. I know there's avenues to do it. I just don't know if I want to risk it. So if anyone watches this video out there that's willing to import some of that stuff, like holla at your boy, man. I will hype that shit up, whatever it takes so I can have the opportunity to buy one. That rail, shorter barrel, suppressor mount, and I think the gun's honestly perfect. The trigger's fine. I wouldn't even switch out the trigger. I'm not sure that AR15 triggers can just drop into this thing. Let me know. Maybe I'm wrong. But that's it, man. I think that's all we're gonna do to this thing in the future. But as is, it definitely has the necessities. The safety, the butthole stock's gone, more modern stock, a way to put an optic on it, the charging handle that's set straight instead of at an angle so you don't drag your knuckles on your optic. Those are kind of the must-haves. And when compared to shooting the K2, a DR200 with these slight changes honestly is a better shooting gun. And even my buddy Jay that owns all 3, K1, K2, and a DR200 setup similar to this, was the first to say, he's like, dude, I enjoy shooting the DR200 more than any of them. And it's the least valuable. Just because with a few touches, you like unlock the potential. And on that note, it just goes to show that the Daewoos just weren't here long enough to really get into that high-end aftermarket support. They weren't here long enough. I think the only 2 companies making stuff for these now is Pierce Precision and Stormworks. That's pretty much it. And even then, when they sell out, they stay sold out for a while because there's just such a small amount of these in the country, and it's a fixed amount. So you can imagine they're not constantly cranking out parts for these. Why would they? There's just not that many in civilians' hands. So I feel like if the Daewoo would have stuck around a little bit longer, I feel like it would be one of the most popular self-loading carbines for civilians in this country. And I firmly believe that it honestly is that good of a gun. It just suffers from being a little too rare, not having a lot of parts to replace parts if you break them. There are surplus places like Numeric and Apex. Every now and again, they'll have Daewoo parts, but it just suffers from that. And, you know, aftermarket suppliers not touching it with a 10-foot pole because no one would buy the stuff because there's just not that many out there and no one's making parts out of the goodness of their heart. They have to make money. So there's that. Anyway, I still feel very fortunate to have this thing. These are tanks. They do last a long time. People have very high round counts on them. This gun will survive. It'll outlive you. It really will. So on that note, that's my Daewoo. I'm very happy with it. Shooting today was a ton of fun. It always feels special to shoot it. And if you guys have Daewoos, let me know down in the comments. And maybe you don't. Maybe you have something cool and retro that other people might sleep on, or maybe everyone knows about it and they've gotten expensive. But what is your like go-to cool collectible retro gun? Put that down in the comments. Maybe you don't even own it yet and you're looking for the opportunity. I would love to hear what everyone's kink is. So with that, I'll see you all next time.